Hi, math friends. Today we're looking at our study guide for multiplying and dividing positives and negatives. And this also includes fractions as well. So let's get going with this. Remember that I see this little dot that means multiply. A negative times a positive, that should be a negative. And then we do 5 times 10. So the only thing that changes is what the sign is going to be versus what we learned before. 3 times negative 1, so I get 3. There's one negative sign, so it's negative. Same here. 6 times 6, remember when they're next to each other in parentheses, it means multiply. I get 36. There's one negative, so it's negative. 4 times 3, remember that positive times a positive is a positive. Division works the same way. 20 divided by 2 is 10. And I have one negative sign, so it's negative. Same here with number 6. Divide, we get 3. One negative sign makes it negative. Same idea with 7. This is multiply now. We get 28, and it's going to be negative. With number 8, negative times negative. Remember, this means the opposite of a negative. Opposite of a negative is positive, so this is positive 3. If you really want to write a plus 3 there, you could, or you could leave it as only 3. 4 times negative 4, we get 16, and there's one negative sign, so it's negative 16. Now let's check out the fraction multiplication. Remember, with fractions, we multiply straight across. The new thing for us is that there could be negatives. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. 9 times 5 is 45. And here we can simplify. These are both divisible by 3. So if we divide by 3 over 3, we're going to end up with negative 4 over 15. And that would be our final answer. So we'll go ahead and circle that. Remember, when you write this, make sure that your negative sign is really easy to read there. If you don't have room, write it somewhere else really neatly so that it's clearly visible. All right, same with the next one here, number 11, but this is division. Remember, when we divide, we need to flip that second fraction because the inverse of dividing is multiplying. So then we also do the inverse of the second fraction. And now we can multiply straight across. Negative times negative, we get positive. So we get 22. 2 times 5, 10. And then these, we can divide this by 2 over 2. They're both even numbers. And you can write this as a mixed number or an improper fraction. Either way is okay. So I get 11 over 5, and you can leave it like that. All right, another multiply. Negative 7 times 1, negative 7. 4 times 14, we get 56. And we can simplify this one too. These are both divisible by 7. So when I do that, I get negative 1 over 8. Last one here is division. So remember, we got to take our second fraction and flip it. Some of us think of keep, flip, change. And it would help if we wrote the right number there. So 2 over 7 goes here. And it leaves me with 24 over 35. And we can't simplify that any further than that. All right, let's look at order of operations here. So remember, we have to do absolute value in parentheses. Those are part of the parentheses or the brackets level of PEMDAS or BEDMAS. So negative 3 plus negative 10, I have to do that first. And on this study guide video, I'm going to do each step really, really carefully. Absolute value of 25 is 25. And now I look back at the original absolute value here. I have to do this first. This is 13 minus 25. And the answer would be negative 12. When you get your final answer, make sure that you circle it. And if it's negative, make sure that we can see that negative sign really, really clearly. All right, same idea with the next one. Absolute value, we have to do that first. I see parentheses, so we have to do all the brackets here. This is 13. And then there's a times 2 hanging out here. Now remember, next parentheses, exponents, and then multiplication division comes next. So I have to multiply next. So this is 26. I still have this plus 1 at the beginning. And my final answer will be 27. This one I'm going to do parentheses first. Negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. Now remember, those are parentheses, not absolute values, so I'm going to leave that as negative 10. Absolute value of negative 3 is going to be 3. Add them together, I get a negative 7. Also remember on here, show all your work. That's what we're looking for. Last one here, number 17. 9 minus 15, so that's going to be negative 6. And I still have that absolute value, so we're going to do that in just a minute here. And this one, absolute value of negative 6 would be 6. So yeah, let's simplify this to 6. Now I have 6 divided by 6, and I get positive 1. So be careful to show all your work. Each little step is important here, because it's showing that you know the whole process to do these. All right, with long division, remember, we want to see how many times does this number go into this one. We disregard this negative until the end. All right, so 4 goes into 1. It doesn't. 4 goes into 10 twice without going over. So we're going to do 4 times 2 is 8. Subtract it, and we get 2. And then here I need to make a decimal. I'm going to do this part in red. The decimal goes straight up because we don't want to do remainder. We want to know the decimal equivalent here. So drop down 0. 4 goes into 20 5 times. 4 times 5 is 20. And we have nothing remaining, so that means that we're done, 2.5. Now go back. We have a positive divided by a negative here. So my final answer is going to be negative 2.5. Make sure that you write that clearly and circle it so that we know exactly where that final answer is. All right. This second one for long division here, same idea. Disregard the negative until the end. 8 goes into 2, it does not. 8 goes into 21 twice. 8 times 2 is 16. So we subtract and get 5. And then we need to do our decimal again because we need to go a little bit further. All right, so 8 goes into 56 times. 8 times 6 is 48. We get a 2, so that means I need another 0. Drop that down. 8 goes into 20 twice. And extend this line here, this vinculum. So 8 goes into 20 twice. 8 times 2 is 16. Subtract that, we get 4. Sometimes we got to keep going with these. All right, but we should get either a repeating decimal or we should get a terminating. We should get something at the end here. We'll see. 8 goes into 45 times. 5 times 8 is exactly 40. So now we have no remaining parts here. All right, so now we're ready to write our final answer. So our final answer, we're going to say 2 and 625 thousandths, or 2.625. And now look at your original question. Negative divided by positive. So I'm going to have a negative here. I'm going to circle it, make sure that we know it's for that problem, and we should be good to go. We showed all that beautiful work there. All right, last part of this is word problems. So word problems we have to read very carefully. You notice there is a leak in an inflatable pool. It loses 3/4 of an inch of water every hour. How much water does it lose after 5 hours? Well, I know that like if I'm having trouble with fractions, if it was 2 inches every hour, I would do 2 times 5, right? So now I need to do the same thing with the fraction. Instead of 2, I'm going to use the fraction that I have, 3/4. And I multiplied by 5. Remember when we multiply by a whole number? This is 5 over 1. So I can see how much we lost here. So 3 times 5 is 15. 4 times 1 is 4. All right. So here's where we need to write our final sentence. We should probably change this into a mixed number for this problem. So this is going to be 3 and 3/4. It's almost 4 wholes. It's 3 3/4. So our final answer, we could write a couple different ways, and we're going to look at that right here together. So we could say, let's get a text size that we can actually read here. So we could say there was a loss of 3 3/4 inches of water height because it's losing that much height. You could also say after 5 hours, the pool had -3 3/4 inches of water compared to when it started. Because we see that it had a loss. Either way you could explain it. I would say the more common way, though, would be the first one. Describe the loss by saying the word loss. But you could use a negative. Just be careful if you use a negative so that it makes sense. All right, number 21, your friend has 5/8 of a cake left after a birthday party. You want to have half of that. So again, if you're having trouble with fractions, think of a whole number. If you have 4 cakes and you want to have half of the cakes, well, 4 cakes, half of the cakes I would multiply. That means that I would have 2, right? So now let's do the same thing with the fraction. 5/8 of a cake is what we have, times 1/2. So now we multiply straight across, 5 over 16. So it means you will take, and I'm going to write this in right here, you will take 5/16 of the cake. Make sure that we have a final answer there. Make sure that it answers the question. Always go back to the question and rephrase it. All right, the very last one on our study guide for us to practice on here. Your math teacher is really nice and is allowing you to earn 2/3 points extra credit on each assignment that you do research on to find a real-world connection. If you earned 20 extra credit points, how many assignments did you do extra research on? So again, I'm going to think of this as like I earned 20, and let's round. Let's say this 2/3 is for 1. So if I earned 1 point for every assignment, how many assignments did I do? Well, that means I did 20. Each one was 1 point, so I got to 20. So now we got to do the same thing. However, we're going to use 2/3 as our value. All right, and I have to remember 20 over 1. So now we're going to divide together because I have the final answer, and now we're working backwards from multiplication. 20 divided by 2, that works. 1 divided by 3, that does not work to get a whole number. So we'll have to go ahead and flip that second fraction and multiply. So let's do times 3 over 2. Remember, this is what we want to see. This is a division problem, and the way that we solve it is by the keep, change, flip. So I get 60 over 2. 60 over 2 simplifies to 30. All right, so what does that mean? Go back and read the question. So this means you did extra research on 30 assignments. Kind of a lot, but you also earned a lot of extra credit here, so that's really cool to see. All right, so we hope this helps. Remember, go back, check what we did, check what you did. Make sure that you really understand this well before you get tested on it. All right, good luck, math friends.